Let's continue here and actually allow the user to sign in. Say they logged out or something. This would be connecting to our sign up. All right, so let's set up our sign in view controller now. This will allow us to sign in the user that's already been created. So say we tried signing up with the email that's already been used, it'll prompt us, this email has already been used, you should probably sign in. So let's do that. Or if a user's account already exists, this is what we're going to do it for. So it's the same exact process as when we created our user. It's just different methods. We'll create that auth object again. And from this auth object, we are going to call our sign in. Now, there's multiple different sign in. We could have a credential that we store into the actual application. There could be something along with that. We could sign in anonymously. This would be good for, say you have an application where you want to get users started without signing in right away. This is something that's great to use, this sign in anonymously. The one we do want is sign in with our email. Everything else we do not want. Then there's two different email ones. There's one that contains our email and a link. And then there's one that has an email and a password. We want the email and the password. We do not create a link for this user to sign in with along with their email. So what we'll do here, same exact process again. We want to make sure our email field.text, and make sure you do unwrap it. And password field.text. And then we can just double click here again. This will be our auth result. Cannot spell. And then our error. And then we want to make sure there are still no errors before we sign in this user. So we'll just return. And this will just throw us out of the function and present that little error message. And if you want, you can just copy and paste from the sign up. I'm just going to show you guys how you could continue practicing with using that service and then that static function we created. So our title will be error again. Our message will be that localized description. We'll have it animated and completion nil. And then we'll move our seg below that if statement. Perfect. Now, if you try and sign in now with the account we had created previously, should probably unwrap our error. If you now sign in with the account we created previously, you'll successfully sign in. If you try to sign in with an account that has not been created or someone else's account and you have the wrong password. So if we try and sign in with the incorrect password, we'll get that error that the account password is incorrect. So let's try our correct password. And perfect. Now we've actually signed in and we've completed the simple part of this where we just we call an object, we call the object's function for signing in or creating, and then we present a couple of views based on how the process went. And it's simple as that. That's how Firebase has improved so much from what it used to be, and this is just incredible. But say the user signs in right away and they want to sign out. Well, that's what we have this logout button for. If we try to run this app again, we can start at our welcome view controller and not our home view controller. And what we're going to quickly do is actually set up and allow the user to stay on one page rather than continue and go to a different page. So now that we've actually created the sign in and sign up functionality, we want to start moving into more of the user base and storing that information into the database inside Firebase. So what we'll do now is we're actually going to allow the user to stay signed in. It won't be the prettiest way. There's definitely a better way of doing this where you could create two storyboards, and then based on the user's status, if they're signed in or signed out, you would present a certain storyboard. But we're not going to be doing that. We're actually just going to perform a seg. It won't look pretty. It'll actually look pretty ugly as the view will pop up from the bottom up. We could try something else, but we'll just do that for simplicity right now. So what we're going to do, we are going to create a storyboard identifier. Before we do that, let's click on our navigation controller, click on the attributes inspector, go over down and we want to cross dissolve for the transition style, and then over full screen, since we just want to present this view over the full screen. And then click on the identity inspector, and we are going to create this storyboard identifier. And then we'll go back here. Oh, make sure this is connected. I messed that up. So I accidentally deleted this. So control hold and then click and drag and make sure it is our root view controller. And then go back into our welcome view controller. And we want to check if our user is signed in or not. So what we'll use the user defaults. User defaults are, of course, not the prettiest way and not the safest way or private way of storing certain credential values, such as checking if a user is signed in or signed out. Or just for demo purposes, we will be using user defaults to store a variable if it's true or false. So if it's signed in or they're signed out. So what we'll do, we'll just create our let defaults, user defaults, standard. If you don't really know or are a bit confused about user defaults, check out the documentation in the description below. I'll have links to a whole bunch of different things from this video, previous videos as well. This is just a series I've been working on, and we're just going to be working from Firebase up, creating a full functional app over time in Xcode 11, Swift 5, I believe. Yes. And then, so we've created our user defaults, and we are just going to check for a Boolean variable if our defaults.bool, and in our string, we'll just call it is user signed in. So if our user is signed in, we want to create a view. So since we're in the current storyboard, which is main, and we're not working with multiple storyboards, and we're not working with just code, we're just going to create a view. And we can just call this view controller. And this view controller, we are going to instantiate from the current storyboard. So instantiate. And then that identifier that you copied earlier for that UI navigation controller, just paste it in. And then you can call UI navigation controller if you want. And then we've already set up the defaults, but you can, again, if you want, set up the transition styles along with the presentation style. So our transition will be our cross dissolve, and then presentation style. Presentation will be that over full screen. Perfect. And then what we will do from there, we are just going to present this view controller. All right. It's not going to look pretty again. This is not how you would do it in an actual application that you're launching out. I might try and launch a couple tutorials or these quick little tips and tricks to get around this sort of things. If you have Habite downloaded, I've actually created a little trick where I have a class and I go to a certain storyboard based on what the user is signed in or not. I don't use user defaults for that, of course, privacy. Don't want jailbreakers or anyone outside the source to get in and just change that variable or so. All right, so now that we've set this up, we want to check if the user is signed in, and if they are, we will present a certain view controller. And we've already integrated everything. I've ran it before, so my user is most likely signed in, but let's just build and run. And perfect. If you saw that little quick transition from our welcome view to our home view, that was because of this. But now that our user is actually signed in, you can test it out. You can sign in your user. We need to allow the user to sign out. So if you've already signed in and tested everything and you have this view and then you build and run again and it pops up with this, you're good to go. I will actually create this application and put it on Git so you can have like full code and be able to access, and then of course ask any questions you want or add on to it. It can be open source project as well, but we're just going to be building on from this application over time.